Welcome back to the Whole Topic Podcast. Today I have Lex. She's in California right now. I found a post of yours several months ago, I just said, and it was advice for a country homemaker or something. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Um, I read it and I was like, this is like encompasses so much. And so I was like, I'm gonna reach out to her when I get awesome again and get back on the podcast. And here we are today. So Lex, can you go ahead and just introduce yourself? Tell us a little about just whatever you want to tell about yourself. And also just go ahead and tell people where they could find you if they want to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. So I'm Lex from Roosterhead Homestead, and you can find me on Instagram primarily. That's where I'm at, Roosterhead Homestead. And a little bit about me, I'm a mom of two. I'm expecting a third, and I've been homesteading for the last 4.5 years now, I think. And my husband and I grew up in Southern California, so completely different lifestyle, just out the beach. And we really fell in love with this homesteading lifestyle before we moved out of state, and it just wasn't really possible where we were in California. So we decided to move to Montana a couple of years ago and kind of hit the ground running with homesteading. So yeah, that's a little bit about how we ended up there. And then now we're back here temporarily, and then we're going back to Montana hopefully in the next year or two.
Well, that's I know we just talked about it before we got on here to record. Challenging and learning to be accepting our situations, whatever they may be. That God always, there's always a blood. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Gaither vocal band, but
Mhm.
something, oh, we totally should look them up. You probably love them. They're an old gospel band. Well, they're not old, they're still going. But the wife, I don't even remember her name. That's really sad because we listen to their stuff all the time. She said something about like life. Oftentimes we think life is just what we think it's supposed to be like on our schedule. But she's like, life is often in the interruptions. And I'm like,
Mhm.
ain't that the truth? Like,
Yeah.
that's where I find the most life. Like, that's where I remember, like, oh my gosh, this happened, and you know, that kind of stuff. So, um, there's multiple things that we wrote that I kind of just went through your post and put the topics in a document, and I'm going to ask you to just kind of highlight, and then I want to talk a little bit back and forth about my thoughts on it as well after reading it. And the first thought was, so it's called Advice from a Country Homemaker, and this was your post. And the first one is all children spill milk, learn to work with it. So when you wrote that, what was your thoughts?
So I feel like I can't take full credit for that post either because um there's been like an uncredited like these words of wisdom that have been like floating around the internet for like a couple of years. And I think the original post was advice from a farmer's wife. And it was like 25 pieces, of advice your grandmother or great grandmother might tell you. Just, some old school like thoughts. The longer the dress hem, the more trusting the husband, just things like that. And it was so great. But there were some that really stuck out to me, and I tweaked them a little bit, or I took them because they have a really deep meaning. And so that first one, all children spill milk, learn to smile while wiping it up, basically. Um, that one really hit me because that one comes from a lot of many years of self-healing, um, and trying to regulate my nervous system and with help with the Lord, um, from my past childhood experiences. And so, um, what I found is I was reacting to my children in a way that it was an emergency when it was a non-emergency because of my nervous system and because of my past. Like if something didn't go smoothly or I was surprised by something or it surprised my nervous system, sometimes I would respond in an unloving way to my kids. So it took me almost a decade, like about 10 years, to like rewire my brain and my nervous system so that I wasn't reacting in that way. Like I had to literally tell myself, this is not an emergency. I'm safe. it's just milk on the table, like I really had to work it. So it's a constant thing I still kind of have to work on, but it's, I guess, not as intense of a reaction. And so I feel like, especially as mothers, or even just like when I didn't have children, but I was in a relationship, like I was really quick to react when my nervous system, when I felt threatened or I felt like something wasn't really going smoothly. So that's kind of where that comes from. And especially when you have little kids, you have things that are happening like that all the time that are unexpected, and it can be really overwhelming. Or if you have, multiple kids that are little, like I remember having a newborn and a toddler, and I just felt like a chicken with my head cut off. Like I was running around and I just was stressed about literally everything instead of letting certain things be. So yeah, just it's true. All children spill milk. They do. They all make messes. They all make mistakes. They're just learning how to be in
Yeah,
this
it's just
world.
only, I think something that I've said a lot on here, and I say to a lot of people, is being a parent is a lot of times just about learning to regulate our own emotions so that our kids can mirror how to do that. And that's so true. Like, I like how you said, just be really intentional about thinking about, hey, this happened. If it's not emergency, just tell yourself this isn't an emergency. You don't want your kids shaking in their boots every time they make a mistake. Um,
Yes.
it's interesting though. I think it's very interesting because I too have learned a lot from my childhood and things like what not to do, unfortunately, from my background. Um, but it's interesting how much we've taken, and now we're thinking about like this is our children's childhood. What are they gonna feel from it, learn from it? And we're not perfect, but I think
Yeah.
just looking at that, it's like there's just grace. Just give more grace, you know, with with your kids when they do things like that. And that kind of leads to the next one. It's easy to clean an empty house, but hard to live in one.
Yeah. I mean, that one kind of speaks for itself. Like I don't know if you've ever, had a day where your husband just like takes the kids out for half the day and you're like, "Oh, I'm so productive. I can get all this stuff done." But if they were gone for days and days and days at a time, you would miss them, like you
Yes. Are
don't
you
miss the messes while you're cleaning it up. But once the house is clean, it's clean. And your kids aren't there anymore. And it's a hurtful silence sometimes, Um, I think that actually affects my husband more than it affects me. Like he's made comments before where he's had to like we were visiting in California and he'd had to fly back for work to Montana and he's like, it stinks being that house alone
Oh my God,
for like a week. And
oh my husband.
yeah, and not hearing the kids and it's like depressing. He's like, I just like wanted to just, I don't know, just crawl back in bed and like, what do I do with myself? So yeah, it's yeah, you clean the house. It's easy to clean the house if no one's making messes, but it's hard. It's hard to live in that. And I remember that feeling before I had children too, but I would preoccupy myself with different things, researching, reading, going out, doing whatever, because there's a loneliness there, a companionship that you're longing for.
Yeah. Our children really
Yeah.
do bring something to like I heard somewhere there was a study done and I don't have the study, so don't come at me, but I just in random like hearing where they asked a whole bunch of like older people 70 and above. Like it was a bunch of grandparents, I guess. And they were like, what was the best years of your life? And every single one of them said it was the years with their children. Now, not that I don't think we should thrive more throughout our entire lives and always have things we can look forward to and do in our life. But I truly think like even where like the way I live now, we discussed this kind we're kind of living in limbo right now, right between a camper and get moving into our house. And but I cannot imagine not having my children around. I cannot imagine even if it is messy. Like it's so true. But I kind of wanted to add a little bit to this, a little bit more thought to this thing. Um, Well, actually, I think we hit on this. I think you hit on this further down. Maybe I'll come back to this because like rhythms and routines and stuff like that. And there was something you said, I think, in this post where you talked about maybe we'll just go down to that. Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and do this last one because it goes right into what we're talking about now. So
Sure.
living in a messy house is okay, but filth is not.
Mm.
That is such
Okay.
That's such a thing because you go like, have you ever seen those internet sensations where one lady's like, "Yeah, this is my messy house," and she's all proud of it, trying to be all relatable to tired moms that are truly tired and they don't want to be messy. It's just happening because their hormones are unbalanced and they have children literally needing them every second of every day. So the difference
Yeah.
that I look at that, I'm like, that's probably not the healthiest mentally, like, because you can tell a lot by a person usually their mental state by how they keep things. But I want you to like touch on that. Living in a messy house is okay. Living in filth is not.
Yeah, and I mean, I when I reposted that specific one, that one was inspired by another homemaker that I follow actually, and she mentioned that, and that actually kind of hit me pretty hard because there's the occasional like I find a piece of rotting fruit underneath the couch, and I'm like, oh no. But again, this hit me because it's personal. Like it's also something I had to heal from my childhood. When I was growing up, it was never acceptable to be messy. Um, like I'd get in trouble or I'd be punished, or not be able to see my friends, like if my room was messy. And so I had to clean for hours. Because first of all, those habits weren't formed for me, of like keeping up with it. And so then I'd just be cleaning my room for hours. And then the sun would go down and I wouldn't be able to do anything for that day. Um, but I don't put those like outrageous standards on my children and my family. I mean, my kids are still really young, they're 7 and 4. And if they don't do something or clean something up right away, I don't make a huge fuss about it. Um, I used to, and it caused a lot of tension between my kids and I. It caused tears. It caused frustration. I ended up just doing it myself and feeling overwhelmed. But and that triggers something in me. I was angry or I was yelling at them. They were in tears. But what I had to remember is that I wasn't homeschooled. I was never home. I was, away at school, and my kids, which are homeschooled, they're living their entire childhood in my house. And I had to remember that. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that, of when my house is constantly, there's tiny little messes everywhere. They're living their entire childhood. They're not gone at school for 7 hours a day. Um, and tidying up is like, it's kind of just a constant thing around here, like at my house. When I'm training my children now to clean up one activity before they move to the next room. And so sometimes I'm like, wait, and I have to kind of put them back into the room. I'm like, let's clean this up together before we go outside and ride bikes or whatever. So it's something that I have to stay on top of, or else I get really overwhelmed. And doing research over the years and the mold situation and all that kind of freaks me out too. And so I have to make sure that, if you go into someone's house and you look at their baseboards and you look at their, like carpet that hasn't been vacuumed in 10 years, like that's different than messy. Like filth is different than messy. When you have crumbs and you have mold and you have dust, and that you're not routinely cleaning in that way, then it kind of turns into like a health issue. So yeah, the moldy orange under the couch, like not that big of a deal, because you didn't find it. Um, yeah, but it can turn to an unhealthy status. So they're different. They're different. You know, messy and filth are they're different. And those are habits that are really important to form, you know, if you haven't as an adult, but also teaching your children as well. Because it attracts bugs and it attracts rodents and it becomes a health issue at that point. So yeah, that one hit me pretty hard too. You know, the mess can sometimes wait another day. The
Yeah.
filth cannot. It cannot. Yeah.
That honestly comes like even for me, I have 7 kids and I'm still learning to make sure because I grew up in a very filthy home. Like there was a lot of filth. And that I want to go complete opposite um of that. And so a lot of this comes down to creating habits, like creating
Yeah.
habits, rhythms and routines. People thrive on those. And I think that you hit on that. Like with the habits, if you can just create small, I'm actually reintroducing even now as like the last couple weeks, reintroducing habits I dropped after having the baby because babies take over life for a little while. Um,
Yeah.
but if you deal with living in filth, one, don't kill yourself trying to do it all at once, but two, really consider where your mental health is as well. I really truly believe our mental health plays a huge part in
Yeah.
our atmosphere and how messy we let it to get it, or how messy we let it get. At least I know that has been the case for people that I was around. Um, and sometimes even myself, like if I notice I'm letting something get out of hand, I'm like, okay, why am I not doing this? Because I know I have habits to keep up with that. So if someone's in that place where they're like, man, my house isn't just messy, like I can't just take like, a few minutes and pick it up and put everything together. It's literally filthy and it's going to take me at least 2 to 3 good weeks to scrub everything out because it's so bad. Um, One, I just think it's unhealthy for mental and physically. I just think it's unhealthy. But I don't know. I like that one just for the fact that you have all these organizing people, which I think is fine, but some of it is, it's not conducive to living in a family life. Like you're like, okay, that's nice to keep all that, you know, all perfect, but it's not necessarily reality for a lot of families. But keeping things
Yeah.
tidy
Yeah.
and
And you have to find a rhythm and a routine that works for you and your
yeah.
family. Like the laundry was something that I could never stay on top of, and it was really overwhelming for me. Um, and I was trying to do what other families were doing, like, you know, once a week, you know, I just do all the laundry. And then and that wasn't working for us because it was a whole week until I did the laundry, and then it was too much and I couldn't get it all done. And then we didn't have any clean clothes. So you have to really, for me anyways, and it's going to be different for everybody, I have to do things in like bite-sized chunks. You know, things will build up and then I have to you can't wait any longer. You know, it's like the dishes have been in the sink for 3 days and I've been like walking past them like this, you know, and I'm like, I have to just do this. But it's easier to do them and create a rhythm or routine work for me anyway, in bite-sized chunks. Like the one little load of laundry a day from start to finish is like has been a game changer. I never finish all the laundry. I always have dirty laundry in the hamper, but my kids always have clean clothes. We always have clean clothes, and I never fall behind, and I'm not stressed out about it anymore. So I think the little bite-sized chunks and the habits and the routines, and you know, from a homemaking standpoint too, is I've read a lot of old books and articles and things like that of these tiny little habits that I was never taught. We had like a house cleaner growing up. So the filth piece, I actually never saw it. So because it was taken care of every single week and it wasn't a habit that I was taught. Tidiness, it was something I was taught, but not the cleaning piece of it. So you know, little things that can help you, like making the bubbles and the hot water in the sink while you're prepping dinner for
Mhm.
the dishes that are already in there. So when you're done with dinner, your dish is already soaked and they're
You're
the
the
easy
one
and
that said
fast to
that.
clean.
Okay, what book did you find? Okay,
Yeah,
I
it's
know you read a book about this.
I'm trying to remember the name. It's something Homemaker, but it's like it's from the 50s. I'll have to send it to you. Maybe you can like link it in the show
I
notes or
need that
something.
one. I
But
totally need that.
yeah, I have a screenshot of it because I was sharing it with so many different people. But these little like 50s like tips that make a huge difference because then you have to wait for it to soak and then you forget about it and then you're like then it's the next day. So yeah, these forming these tiny little habits that don't take a lot of time that you just kind of build into your routine, and then you have your children help you too, obviously age appropriate. Like if we didn't have a dishwasher for the last two houses we were in, and so I was always hand washing dishes, which takes a lot of time. But if you did have a dishwasher, you could run the cycle at night before you go to bed, and then have the kids empty it in the morning. A 3 or 4 year old can help with that. Putting silverware in the silverware drawer while you're making breakfast. So just these little habits really really help with that.
And it's surprising how like all of my kids from 3 on, well, I mean, I start sitting with them and we put toys in their bin at 18 months. I mean, they even know that at that point. And it's not like I'm like, go clean up all your toys. Like we just go in and work on it together. But even from 3, it's amazing. And I said this, I think, in a couple podcasts ago, like if you, your kids can do a lot more than you think they can. They're very, and they actually, there was a study done that they said that kids that did get a responsibility, an age appropriate responsibility, and they completed it, it was like it gave them more responsibility. They felt more confident in themselves. So I think it's also, along with all these things, I think one of the things is teaching our kids to help form those habits. And I was like, that's what I was going to say, is I just read a 1940s, it's called 1940s Homecraft, and it's a homemaker's book as well. And she had some like really good tips in there as well. I just was like, I remember someone saying something about the pan, and I was like, well, maybe it's in this book because she, like, whatever tips you were giving at that point, they were like, I loved them. And I was telling the kids, I was like, I remember hearing someone say, put the pans in there, and soak it was like a 1950s tip. So please,
Yeah.
let me get that book from you, and I will
Yeah.
read it. I'll probably put it on my stack of books I'm reading right now.
Sounds good.
Um, so, okay, so we'll just go with that. Living in a messy house is okay. Living in Phil's not. So, um, don't come at don't come at us for saying this, but because I know some of you don't have time to make dinner, whatever, make peanut butter and jelly if it keeps peace in the home. That's all, you can do whatever you want. But I do like the statement because it's so true. Homemade is always better than store-bought. Um, Before I let you expand on that, I'm just going to tell you something that I heard, and then I even asked my kids about. So we make freshly milled bread, and once it's out of the, it's the best when it's fresh out of the oven. You can put butter on it. And so whenever we bring them in, it takes 2 loaves, and my family will eat 2 loaves at one time. Like it's gone. No questions asked.
Yeah, same.
So, but I was talking to the kids, I was like, what if I put a store-bought loaf of bread in the middle of the table with a stick of butter? How would you feel about it then? I was like, would you come ravish it like you're doing this? Like, nope. It's
Yeah.
so true. Homemade just brings something, it just brings a unity together that I don't feel like you get when you just like are tossing, which some of us need to do that every once in a while. I have needed to do that more often than not the last few months. But can you expand on your thoughts on that? Homemade is always better than store-bought.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have very many thoughts about it. I was just like, this is just true, like, and there's nothing like homemade, fresh, warm bread out of the oven. And I never experienced that as a child either. And so when I started making it when I was older, I was like, this is incredible. Um, yeah, my kids, I mean, they're waiting in the kitchen for me to take that bread out of the oven.
Mhm.
And my husband eats like a whole loaf to himself, so I always make 2 loaves too. But yeah, I mean, it just is for two reasons. Like you said, there's like kind of a, as humans, you got to think about like the gatherings we have throughout the year, birthdays and Christmas and Thanksgiving and just kind of all these things, reunions, whatever. It's always centered around food. And that's how we are as humans. And so it's important. The food's important. Not only so homemade is always better than store bought because you know what's going in it. You know the ingredients. I mean, that might not always be true if you're just using, processed ingredients. It's going to be just as bad as buying it at the grocery store. But usually when you're making something from scratch, you're more intentional about the ingredients. And so it not only tastes better, it's better for you. And there's this sense of connection with your food, with the person making it. And I'll never forget, I had my parents come visit for when they lived in California. They're now in Montana, but they lived in California and they were coming out to visit. And I had made a dish. I don't even remember what it was, but my dad was like oohing and ahhing while he was eating, and he said, "This meal reminds me of my mom, something that she would make." She has since passed away, but he's like closing his eyes, like bringing him back to his childhood of something that I made that, I mean, she didn't teach me how to make it, but the smells, the homemade ness of it, the whatever it was, it reminded him of something his mother had made him when he was younger. And that was a huge compliment to me, but I just was watching him experience this memory with this really good homemade food. And so yeah, I just think that my kids were going to have that memory too. My grandkids are going to have that memory because I cook from scratch. Like, there's nothing like grandma's whatever, homemade bread or homemade cookies or whatever. It's very relational. So
Yeah.
I stand by that. I think that homemade is almost always better than store bought.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, totally agree. And honestly, the more you eat at home, the more you see even just the taste difference. Like it's
Yeah.
not even a question. Um, so my husband, he's kind of a stickler about the kind of food that we consume, just because he's like, if it's part of our health insurance, we want to make sure we're eating well. And
Yeah.
so we used to go out once a week because we do a date night once a week. And we used to go out once a week to get dinner. Well, he was, the more we went out and the more we learned about food and the more things we kind of saw in the industry, he was just like, I just really wish we'd eat at home more. Well, I didn't want to cook. That being said, since my kids were little, since they were like 3 years old, every one of them, as long as I had a kitchen to cook in, had been in the kitchen with me to help cook, and I would teach each of them how to cook. And so they wanted to make money. So my husband was like, well, why don't we just pay them? Like they're good cooks, and sure enough, like, and they are good cooks. They cook what we cook. They cook what I cook. Like I can hand them any recipe that we've made that I like, and they already know how to cook it. So, um, it, the longer you cook at home, the less you'll think differently of this statement, because it does always taste better, and the kids even realize it. Like one time I went to my husband's out of state on business, and I took all my kids because at that point I had 6 kids, and it was just one of those days. I did not want to cook. My husband wasn't home. He wasn't going to care. So I took them to a fast food restaurant and grabbed some fast food. Well, we get home and we hadn't eaten out in forever. Like we had been eating at home consistently. And they were like, Mom, we don't feel very good. That didn't taste good. Can you not take us out again to those restaurants?
Hmm.
And like, so they even started seeing the difference and started feeling the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
so health
We
wise,
never feel good. We never feel good when we go eat out. It's a thing. And from a very, very young age, that was really important to me, was nutrition. That's where I focused most of my energy. When I got pregnant with my first baby, I was like, what am I going to feed this child? Because I don't cook. And so it kind of like it lit a fire under me to learn how to cook, because I didn't know how. And again, that wasn't a skill that I was taught. I'm completely self-taught in that area. So um doing a lot of research of nutrition and ingredients, and going down that path from a very, very young age for my children, I made sure that I introduced them to a variety of different foods so that their palate was expanded, so they were not picky eaters, so that it would help them establish good habits from a very young age. I was just talking to my husband the other day, but my kids are like smoothie kids. So we make a smoothie, or sometimes two, every single day. I mean, it's got spinach in there, it's got all those different things, and the kids are helping me make it, and it's just laying such a strong foundation for their future, for health, as to be healthy adults. And because their palate is a certain way, they'll go out and taste things and they're like, oh, this tastes fake or this tastes whatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we all just don't feel good, because of the quality of ingredients
Mhm.
at these restaurants, and the seed oils and all of the things that they put in it that are super inflammatory. They may maybe make it taste better, but we just do not feel good afterwards. So I'm glad from a very young age that we that I really made that a focus.
Yeah. There's nothing like honestly in today's world, I feel like that's one of the biggest foundations we can give our kids. Like one of the things, well, I have 5 things I'm going to have the kids do before they can graduate high school. And that is to take, there's 2 classes that I want them to take for herbs and tinctures and learning about teas. And then there's one on them I want to take on food and how, like, what's healthy and what's not, and how to create really delicious meals without getting rid of any of the food groups, because I'm not
Yeah.
a fan of that unless it's a season. Um, but then, so the reason I'm such a stickler about that is I want them to at least read about it, at least have in the back of their head along with everything else I'm teaching them, because there's almost nothing more important to get them out on their own than to teach them the health of what their body is consuming.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I actually just told the kids the other day, I was like, well, you're almost like they're on their last credit. So my kids are kind of ahead in school. So they're on their last credit of English. Um, and then they have like 2 more credits of science, and that's it. And I think they have to finish a little math. But I was like, you're not graduating because you're still young enough. You're not graduating until you finish all of this, because that is so important to me to get that. So just keeping that in mind when you're raising kids, to just you're setting an example for what health looks like to them as well. I think that's um so okay, so this is another one. There's one I want to come to last, but enjoy doing your kids' laundry. Someday they won't be there.
Hmm. So this one, this is also kind of personal, and why this one hit me. And again, because we were talking about the laundry thing, the laundry was just like the bane of my existence for so long until this one thing happened. And I'm the type of person that um, I'm really impacted by other people's experiences and their stories. And as soon as I heard this story, and now that I'm older, I unfortunately know multiple mothers who have lost their children. And so that really, there's somebody in particular, her name's Allison, and her Instagram name is This Prepared Life. And she has been a huge influence on me in the homesteading world and the prepping world. And she has so much knowledge. She has a great podcast with just like the most detailed things about food storage. And she's been a big inspiration for me. But she lost her son. And um, I remember her doing a story on it. She talks about kind of the waves of grief over, the last couple of years and how it comes and goes. And one of the stories she was doing one day was it was just a video of his laundry basket still sitting there. And she's like, I wish I could still do his laundry. And I have the chills. But that hit me so hard. That now when I see my kids like wiping their hands on their shirts and I'm like, that's gonna be a permanent stain. I'm just I'm glad that I have a child on this earth to hold and to love and to do their laundry. And changing your perspective, while we're mumbling and grumbling about the laundry and feeling overwhelmed about it, just changing your perspective can change your whole outlook in life in a second. Like it really did. I have never had the feeling, even when the laundry's huge again, the piles, I just don't have that feeling anymore of I don't want to do this, I'm miserable, this stinks. Why do I have like none of those thoughts even cross my mind anymore. I just put the load in and I'm just happy to be able to wash my kids' clothes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where, and it's true. I mean, that statement is so true. You know, enjoy doing it because they're going to be gone, and then you're going to miss those little stains, and you're going to, you know, God forbid you ever lose a child, but you know, you'll never be able to do their laundry again. And that really had a huge, huge impact on me in the way that I viewed that particular chore. It was that one experience of that mom that really slapped me back down to reality of how blessed I actually am to have children to do their laundry.
That's it. Oh, that's like, oh,
Yeah.
so sad. But I mean, to teach a lesson that hopefully impacts a lot of us who might be struggling to do the simple task of the laundry or helping with the dishes or doing the dishes or making the meals. Like you
Yeah.
think about it, one day they will be gone. Like one day they are, this isn't forever. This is a season. Like I already think about it. My oldest is 15. I don't know where the time went. Like, and I've done tea time with that kid almost every week since he was 3 years old. And I still feel like I haven't done enough. Like it's so such a crazy feeling to think about. So just enjoy doing your laundries, your children's laundry. Someday they won't be there. So perspective, getting a
Yeah.
more getting more of an eternal perspective as well, I think. Um, but so the last one is, that we have here, and I say this for last because it's I should have actually switched the bottom with this one, but make home a happy place for your children. Everybody returns to their happy place.
Yeah.
This is like speaking
So
out.
again, yeah, that one was very personal too for my own, you know, childhood experiences. My home was, as a child, was very cold. It was like always in like model home condition. Um, I grew up in the 90s with like the entryway couch that like nobody sits on kind of thing. Like you don't sit on it. You know what I'm talking about? So when we moved to Montana and I was like, this is where we're going to be, this is where we're going to make our home. I worked really hard for the last couple of years to make that home a cozy home and a happy place that my kids um, have pleasant memories when they're looking back at it. And I talk actually a lot about this. I wrote an ebook called The Spirit of a Homemaker, and I talk a lot about creating these certain spaces in your home where they will never change and they're cozy. And I remember my eldest, I think she was like 5, but we came in from like a co-op day or something. We were gone all day. And she puts her little backpack down on the ground and she goes, "Gosh, I'm so glad to be home." And I'm like, I never had that experience when I was like younger. You know, and that made me feel like, wow, okay, I've created a place where my children can come and they can relax and they feel relieved to come home. Um, Even as adults, like I want them to be happy to come see me and my husband. And yeah, I didn't have that gift as when I was a child. Coming home was like an experience of anxiety. So for me, I'd like retreat to my room because that's where I felt the safest. So that's that's something that's really important to me, especially as a homeschool family. Like, again, my children are living their entire lives and their entire childhood in my house. And so, uh, making it a model home and making it all beige and just not warm and welcoming, that wasn't something that was modeled for me. So I had to work really, really hard to create these cozy little experiences for my children and make sure that it's not only the environment itself, it is a lot of the environment, but it's also the way you carry yourself as a mom because you're creating that atmosphere and environment as well, which is
Yep.
a whole nother set of work to do. So yeah, I want to make sure that even as adults, my kids want to come home. They want to come back to this childhood house that they know and love because they have so many warm, inviting memories there, including us as parents, my husband and I.
And I think too, like it's a haven, and there's a lot. I wrote a post I think about this the other day, but it's like there's a lot we as homemakers and mothers um, cannot control in life. There's a lot we cannot control. There's a lot we don't have influence over. But in our own homes, that domain has been given to us by God. And so therefore we have to look at it as if, hey, this is something I have to protect. Like if there's crazy chaos going, like we've had a few instances where we just had to deal with some really intense situations outside of our home. But when it came to coming back into our home, I didn't want that being, I wanted this home to be a safe place. So the routines are there, the rhythms are still there, and like you, it's like protecting your own little domain that Yah has given you, like that He has blessed us with. And so I think
Yeah.
keeping that in mind um, as we create the haven and yes, like you said, I want my kids to want to come home. I want them like something we've done every family night for over 10 years now. Well, we've done every Friday night is a family night. And every single Friday we sit down and we watch a movie and I'm actually doing an actual podcast. The one of the questions I get asked about a lot, like what is family night? And we've done that for so many years. Every single Friday, every single person like looks forward to it in this family. That's when we make our really special meal. Like tonight, we're doing pot roast and potatoes and carrots, and we have candles. And it's just like a really special time. And then we watch, like right now, we're currently watching Andy Griffith and we're watching When Calls the Heart. But those memories are like so treasured. And the other day, I was talking to my sons about it. We were driving someplace and we're on our way back, and he's like, I was like, every once in a while you have those mom heart moments that you're like, "Ugh, I just wish that you guys can always be kids. Like, I just wish I
Mhm.
always had you guys with me." I was like, because, family nights won't be the same. I hope you start that with your own family and stuff like that. He's like, I got an idea, Mom. How about this? How about we all talk to each other's families, and once a month on Friday we'll come home and we'll do a family night at your house, at Grandma's house. And I was like, I'm down. Like I'm totally down for it. But just that, like you said, that desire even now, like they feel their comfort. They know where they're loved and where they're cared for. Um, so what a gift that we can give them.
Yeah. Right. And I wasn't so careful at the beginning of who I brought into my home, but now I am. I'm very protective. I don't know if you've heard the term domestic church, but um, that's what we try to make our home is a domestic church. Like very protective on who comes in, what comes in through the TV, what kind of books, which literally everything that comes in and out of this house. And that's what we are as mothers and gatekeepers and parents is that we, there are, especially, growing up in the faith and teaching our kids, there's not, like you said, everything we can protect them from. There's some things as Christian parents that we have to protect our kids from. There are some things that we have to discuss with them that we can't completely protect them from that are happening in the world. But there's also some things that should, as Christian parents and children, be completely avoided. And so I've, over the years, I would say recently, like within the last 3 years, I've been super protective on my home and what I bring in. And that includes me as well, what content I'm consuming, what I'm bringing into our home, because we are all connected as a family. And so if I'm the broken chain in the link of my family, I'm allowing things into my home that I don't want for my family. So on a spiritual level too, I have to put on that armor every single day and make sure that I'm protecting myself so that I'm also protecting my family too. Yeah.
I totally get that. Like we had a time period where we were super invested in different ministries, and we had allowed people, and I'm not against helping broken people, but it got to the point that it was like they almost ruled our family schedule and family everything for a while there. And we had to like, there was many things spiritually that we had to like just be like, no, enough. Like we need to protect the four walls of our home. I think that's and and like you said, the content we consume, all of that. Um, it always baffles me. Like I can understand there's certain levels of um like something that I might say, hey, you can't read this or watch this right now, but you can read or watch it later. But if it's actual sin that you're sitting there telling your child, I can watch this because I'm an adult, but you can't.
Mm-hmm.
That like that spells hypocritical, and I totally like I think that even when we think it's not affecting our kids, it's affecting our kids.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
we
we're
are,
telling them how to behave and act, but we're not modeling
yes,
that.
yeah, do as I
Yeah.
tell you to do. So I think you're totally right on that. All of these pieces play into creating a haven
Yeah.
for our homes and our children and our protection for them. Um, that along with, guarding the gates, like guarding the gates of our home. Um, and I think a lot about the enemy is always trying to prey on us. And mothers, I mean, there's a reason there's such an attack on mothers and homemakers and people that want to. And I'm not against a working woman. I'm not against anybody doing what they feel called to do because it's none of my business. That's none of anybody's business. I have seen people, I'm friends with people on both sides of the aisle. But when it comes to no matter what you're doing in life, always remember you are so needed for the protection of your home, like in every way, both spiritually and physically. Your kids need you because there's nothing, almost nothing as fierce as a mother and a father's love for their kids. And that is a huge, I mean, the devil knows when your kids have that because he can't get through. And so um, I think that's just a beautiful thing. Make home a happy place for your children because everybody returns to their happy place.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, all the thoughts that we had today. I think that's all the ones. And I stalk your account a lot, so I'll probably come up with other things I would like to talk to you about because I really enjoyed this podcast. It really hit on a lot of things that um, just speak my language. So um, hopefully this
Thanks
impacts.
for having me. No, this was great.
Yes, and this is the first time I think like I talked to you a lot on Instagram, but this is the first time we've actually connected. So we should probably stay in contact more because this was very fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
We need community for
uh,
sure. And we need to, yeah, support each other. And
yeah,
yeah, there's a lot going on as a mom and a homesteader and a homemaker. And sometimes we just need that. Like, we just need to talk to another person that gets it, is going through it. So
yeah,
yeah.
yep. It's this is. I hope this impacts and helps some of you homemakers, you moms out there that are just need some real talk. So that's gonna end this podcast for today, and we will see you guys next week.